What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Progressive Action TV show. I am your host, Tremel Thompson. And today we are going to discuss a very important topic called congestion pricing. If you guys have not been paying attention to this congestion pricing topic in New York City, you need to pay attention to this show because it possibly can affect you or someone in your household that drives. So I'm not going to hold you guys up. I'm going to jump to an interview that I seen today, and then we're going to jump to our interview to discuss this whole congestion pricing issue, and we're going to see if it's good or is it bad for New York City. So let's check out the interview.
Yes. So yes, thank you for having this. And I first want to say it's a bit disappointing that someone would gaslight others as unfit or not being knowledgeable to speak here and ask you to ignore them. So I would like you to ignore that. The MTA is not losing money because of cars. It's losing money because of years of documented mismanagement of funds and poor overall management of their systems. It's not drivers' faults. Multiple streets throughout the city have been turned into public streets, which is okay. Bike lanes such as 8th Avenue, which is a major corridor, which had its usable lanes reduce, increasing traffic around MSG. Construction and development go undeterred, dining sheds, city bike docks, and the list goes on. None of this has been addressed, and that's a problem that was created, and then congestion pricing is being justified as a solve for that. Congestion pricing is based on what is taking place in other regions, and drivers are being forced to pay for a service that for the most part we do not use, and adding a toll will not make me take the train or the bus. The MTA board has said that they are basing their findings off of what has happened in other regions. If we as a city recognize that this is the most unique and diverse city in the world, how can we honestly think that the results will be the same? London's congestion pricing has always used Milan as an example of successful congestion pricing, but I recommend everyone on here to look it up. It has actually failed to deliver on its reduction of congestion or pollution, and reports from their officials have said that congestion is actually worse now than before. So here we are today to talk about whether congestion pricing is right for the city and will it inadvertently affect the residents. Everything that the MTA has published states that there is no adverse effect on most things. This study just really started. So how is it possible in this short time that we have truly reliable data? It is stated that these things won't be affected. Parking is already a problem. So I'm sure people going outside of the CBD will cause a bigger parking problem, out of borough congestion, increased environmental impact, the effect on low income and economically challenged families and individuals, and a host of other topics that have been reported as being unaffected. How can this be true? This is actually a false statement, and we should take issue with the misleading of the public through hypotheses and guessing. Again, this feels like the books are being cooked to justify the need for congestion pricing. It was stated on many occasions that drivers abuse the streets but pay nothing for it. We have $600 million in tickets, $300 million in meters, motor fuel tax, registration tax, inspections. Truly, the rhetoric should stop about drivers not contributing. And if this is truly about congestion as well, why are there tolls on the road after hours when the city is not congested? I think that we really need to look at true solutions for this and not just throwing money at the MTA or taxing the New York City residents.
Please conclude your remarks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Without further ado, we have Zaire Baptiste, creative strategist. How you doing today, bro?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. You know, good to have you on the show again. You know, you're one of my closest friends, probably one of the smartest friends that I have. And you know, you touched on this topic with brilliancy. Very brilliant how you touched on the topic and you was clear. And I just want to expand on some of the things that you said. And I want to start off with this question. Do you think congestion pricing is right for New York City?
Well, it's a loaded question because it's right in the way that, in theory, congestion pricing is supposed to reduce congestion, reduce pollution, and to be honest, you know, there is a eco responsibility that we have, and so you know, reducing car emissions could be is health consciously the right thing to do. And then we have a problem with traffic. But just creating congestion pricing and charging people is not getting to the root of the problem. So I don't think it's right because I don't think it's being applied properly. It's really being applied to make money for the MTA.
Now, now that you say that, when we pull up the congestion pricing, the toll price, you know, they have a flat rate of $23 basically on everything coming into the city below 60th Street. Do you have a problem with the pricing, like how high the toll is, or do you have a problem with the toll period?
The $23 that you see there in what they're proposing is not the final. There's a scale that it could be as low as like $9, as high as like $23. And that's on the car level. So let's just go from cars, because then there's cars, then trucks. Just like when we use any of the tunnels or bridges, the trucks pay more than the cars. So at the low end, a car would maybe be $9, the truck $23, the truck $23. At the high end, the car is $23 and the truck would be something more. So they haven't, because it's still in its infancy and they're trying to get this passed, there is no number yet. And they have set up 7 different options that they could go with. My problem is, being that they haven't decided on a number, my problem is more the toll itself. If people are familiar with tolling and how roads, bridges, and tunnels get built, the construction companies that build these roadways finance that. The municipality might not finance it. They might not have enough money. So they allow the developer, the construction company, to build. And the toll is put in place to then generate funds to pay that bill. That's what tolls are. And if you talk to anybody from like Staten Island, they will tell you how upset they are because initially that Verrazano Bridge toll was supposed to be there to pay for that bridge, and then it wasn't supposed to be there anymore. The Garden State Parkway in New Jersey, the same way. That toll was put there to pay for the work that got done, and once it was paid off, it was supposed to disappear. But we all know that it's such a cash cow that they don't get rid of it. And so we end up with tolls that remain way after their purpose.
Now, the congestion price, and the reason that they given for that is because the MTA need money.
That's it.
To create better signals, get better trains and things like that. The MTA have a history of mismanaging money. Do you believe this extra money from congestion pricing would solve their issues?
I don't think so, because if you are mismanaging money, if you're a person that's not good with money and I give you more money, it's not going to make you better with the money. It's just going to make you worse with more money because you have that capacity. And so we are not, you're running a business. The MTA is a business. I run a business. You run a business. We run a business. If we don't manage our business right, are we able to then put a toll at our front door and make everybody pay that walks down the street, and we collect that money to fix our business that we're not running right? It doesn't make any sense. And so, again, my thing is the root of the problem. What's the root? There's some mismanagement. You know, a couple years ago, the MTA said they had a surplus of $1 billion. Then it disappeared. Where'd that money go? Why are they always in debt? They're subsidized by the state. They're always raising the fare, and the service is terrible. Everything's terrible. I haven't been on a train in like 4 years. I refuse to ride the train. It's not even, I was off of the train prior to COVID. I just felt like I didn't want to, there was a possibility of me not getting where I needed to go on time. And there's so many variables between the time I get on the train and the time I reach my destination that could change my day, or that could not get me there on time. And so I drive all the time. And so in that, they are asking the drivers then to subsidize the MTA.
Yeah. So let's talk about congestion pricing that was implemented throughout other regions of the world. You mentioned London. What happened in London with congestion pricing that didn't work that you know it's not going to work in New York City?
So the interesting thing about this is, and I brought that up, and you'd see countless people prior to me speaking and then after me speaking, they always bring up how congestion pricing works, how it worked in London, how it worked in Milan, how it worked in these places, but they don't get into what was done. So, and I'm a person, I spent quite a bit of time in London, and so I know it. Their CBD, Central Business District, is similar to our Wall Street area, and it has terrible traffic. So they implemented this congestion pricing. And in the beginning, when they first started it, as with anything, and something's new, they got a reduction in car traffic. But soon after that, everything went back to where it was. Right now, in Milan and in London, their congestion is worse now than it was prior to congestion pricing. And so I implore people to go and do your own research. You can look it up, and when they keep speaking to you about how it worked, it didn't work. It worked to make money, but it didn't stop the congestion. And if the congestion didn't stop, then the pollution didn't stop. So if you're calling it if this program is set up to do these two things and it's not doing that, is it a failure? But it's making money. So is it not a failure? So when you say, did it work or didn't it work? There's two sides. Yeah, it did work for them to make money. They made a ton of money, and they continue to make money every day. But they made money in the guise that it would be to curb congestion and to curb pollution, and it didn't do that.
Yeah. So when you look at the data, crime is up on subways. You have service issues. Is the MTA really ready for an influx of people to take their service? With this congestion pricing coming.
And this is what I said. Let's make it make sense. Let's just step back for a second. So now, if you implement, because you don't have the money, if you implement this congestion pricing, and in all of their data that they research, which are just hypotheses, because where do they have data from? They just guessed it. Oh, if we do this, it's going to happen like this. It's a guess because they didn't implement it anywhere. There was no test to see if it worked. So how can we sit there and say something's going to work and you never even tested it? But let's say it does. Let's say 30 to 40% of the traffic has stopped coming in and people have jumped on to mass transit. Now, if mass transit is not able to accommodate the riders that it has, right? How is it going to be able to, like you said, to accommodate an influx of new riders that have left their cars at home?
Gotcha.
You're not going to be able, you're just tolling people. So how are you going to make those repairs and upgrades while massive influxes of people are coming into you? You're going to bog down even more people. You're going to make it even more inconvenient for more people, right? That's just logic. That's just 2 and 2 makes 4. And so when they say these things, it doesn't make good sense.
So let me ask you this. You have you mentioned that congestion pricing would hurt the outer boroughs because it would bring more traffic to the outer boroughs. When you look at what urban planner Robert Moses did, and they said that his plan was almost racist in a way because it built highways in minority communities and things of that nature. Do you think that this congestion pricing plan hurts communities the same way as they say Robert Moses' plans did?
Well, it does because it's just the 2.0 version of what already took place. So if you say that the urban housing or the low income housing was placed next to highways and tunnels and things, in which people say all the time, that's where all the emissions are, right? So now the other thing about the congestion pricing is you won't pay a toll if you're on the FDR. So if you come over the Brooklyn Bridge and you get off and you go on the FDR, you go around the toll. If you come off the FDR anywhere below 60th Street, then you get tolled. So all the people are going to divert themselves up and around, and the West Side Highway as well. So if you come through the Hugh Carey Tunnel and stay on West Street and go up, you won't be subject to the toll. West Side Highway, FDR. So that's going to run a ton of people up those corridors, and you're running into the Lower East Side, all those housing projects that are there, and they're in the environmental justice districts, the EJD, I believe they call it. And so there are a lot of studies talking about the change of the traffic going up that way. But in their report, they said there would be no adverse effect. Again, where's the logic? If I have 10 cars in one place and they're creating emissions that are high, and I divert those 10 cars, now there's only 2 cars, but the other 4 cars, the other 8 cars, 4 and 4, are now on those 2 roads. Aren't they contributing to that pollution? So how wouldn't it adversely affect it? What they say is not, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make, if you just listen to them, it doesn't make sense. And you can see the one-sidedness that they've created in what they've drawn up in their research, in their hypotheses.
Now, if they are raising or adding new tolls to fund the MTA, how do you feel about the fares that people pay to get on the subways and bus? Do you think that it should be frozen for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, if that's the case, if you're going to bring in $1 billion, their plan is it's for all the capital work that they need to do in the MTA. So if their plan is to bring in $15 billion. So if you bring in $15 billion, and it does go through, then the fare should never go up again. Should never go up. Why would it? But somewhere along the line, as in so many times before, they're going to say, hey, we're really crunched. The budget's stretched thin. They create these projects like the 2nd Avenue train line that took 20 years to build. And people have raised families and sent children to college from working on those projects. And that's the kind of setup that we see. There's a wastefulness that the MTA uses. And then they'll turn around and be like, you know what? We tried not to do it, but we got to raise the fare again. And then it never stops. It never stops. It'll just keep going. Yeah. So I wanted to say something to get back to your last question about the other regions in London. Is a point that I forgot. So because congestion hasn't been curbed in London, you know what they have on the table right now? They are considering tolling the entire city.
Wow.
Not just the region. Why? Because what? Nobody stopped. The traffic didn't stop. So now they're like, you know what? Let's just charge everybody. So again, that'll happen. You just got to read the writing on the walls. They follow those footsteps. A lot of I forget the lady's name that was handling the traffic infrastructure in the city. She was from Holland. And I don't know if anybody spent time in Europe. Their layout in their cities are completely different from ours. So when you bring these people over to then do urban planning for a city like New York, you're at a disadvantage because they're coming with a different mindset. They live in a bike community and all of these things. It's not what happens here. There's a social economy in New York City. If we keep saying New York City is this unique place, unlike any other place in the world, how can you feel that it's going to react or act like any place else in the world? It's not.
So you believe the future for New York City if they don't curb this congestion or so-called congestion, that the tolling is going to go into the outer boroughs?
Yeah, I mean the tolling probably would end up in more places, and it's easy to just tax you as a driver. If they will just add a tax into the things that we pay for already.
Yeah.
I had so many. There's such a condescending kind of space, and it's racist as well, because you have so many people that jump on, and again, very few people of color in this space. I like to take 1 second to, as they gave their data on who is involved in speaking about this topic. There's almost 9 million people in this city. They've only engaged 14,000 people.
Mm.
I don't know if that's less than 1%.
Way less than 1%.
And so they've only had 500 people speak. That's nothing. That means that they haven't done the job to really reach out to the community, and that's everybody. And so again, when we're on this Zoom and we're on these hearings, you get to hear from a lot of people that, I'm not to say that they're well off, but you get to hear from a lot of people who are in approval of the congestion pricing, and and what they say is a car culture and the privileged people that own cars and all these things. So they kind of again are creating this division in the people, and I dislike that a lot. I had to make a comment about one of the other people that was on today as well, and she asked the MTA officials that were on the call to ignore like everything that we were saying, because now all of a sudden you had people on here that they feel they're professionals in urban planning, in health, in this and that. And how does she know what anybody's doing? Like, when we get on to speak, we don't give our backgrounds. We get into it. We have 3 minutes to speak and we get into it. So when she said that, the first thing that I said is, how dare you allow someone to gaslight you and to gaslight us, and to say that we are not knowledgeable enough to speak on something. And that's a racist, a very elitist position to take in anything. And I find that when we start to talk about these privileged people with cars and car culture, they're building this kind of thing that's against it. And I go back to what I was saying. New York runs on a social economy, and nobody's giving up their car. Cars are part of what we do. Mm-hmm. And I feel like those people that say that aren't native New Yorkers. They're the transplants that move here, and then they say you shouldn't have a car because they don't have a car. Mm-hmm. And it's mind-boggling a little bit.
All right, final question. Who wins and who loses with congestion pricing?
So if you have congestion pricing, the MTA wins because they'll just get tons of money. And to take a few steps, they say that drivers don't pay their fair share in this city. New York City makes over $600 million in tickets. They make over $300 million in parking meters. We pay tax on motor fuel. We pay tax on insurance. We pay tax on registration. We pay tax on inspection. We pay a tax already. Drivers pay taxes. And I'm a person that drives. I ride a bike, the whole thing. But we don't exist in this city and not pay for it. That is the rhetoric that needs to stop. So there are people out here that don't have money. And again, if this congestion pricing goes in, there's something else. They are trying to figure out if they're going to toll you once if you come in, or they're going to toll you every time you come in. So there's one option on the table that once you come into the city for that day, you're tolled. So if you left and came back or you went up to 125th Street and came back down through 60th Street, you wouldn't be told again. Then there's the second option that would have you told every time that you came in and out. And so those charges are going to get passed on to whoever. So if it's deliveries, if it's trucks, whatever it costs them is going to get passed on to the retailer, and the retailer is going to pass that on to the customer. Every time something happens, there has to be someone to pay for it. And as we all know, it's going to trickle down to the guy at the bottom. So a person that needs to they need to get to work. They need to take their family somewhere. They need to come into the city. That's an extra burden on them. Let's not talk about the people that come from New Jersey, because they're going to you're still going to have to pay your toll to come in through the tunnel or the George Washington Bridge, but then you'll be told again to come into the city.
Phil Murphy is actually fighting against that. And New Jersey Congress people is talking about defunding the MTA if this congestion pricing plan goes through. So it's going to be very interesting. So,
and to answer your question, who wins? The MTA, because the MTA just gets this huge bag, a huge bag of money
to mismanage.
Because why aren't we talking about the mismanagement? Why aren't we talking about they haven't done right with everything they've had, all the resources they've had this entire time? They haven't done the right thing. They haven't. And so just feeding them more money that's not going to solve anything. And to go back to why we have what we need to understand is, and I think this is all in the planning, because everything is planned. So we have so many streets have closed for pedestrian walkways and whatnot, and seating. Main thoroughfares, like right in the CBD, I think Broadway is closed. Like for most of the 30s, Broadway is closed. You have bike lanes that have gone into effect. I just was in the city the other day, and 8th Avenue by 34th Street, they took away 2 lanes. One is a bike lane, and then the curb is a walking lane. So there is a huge piece of congestion at like 30th Street, as at 34th Street, it kind of bottlenecks. And so now you have a huge problem in now you have a huge problem in this congestion, and between the bike docks, the bike lanes, the dining sheds, they've let construction and development just kind of take over the city, and they don't even regulate it. You know, you come out, these guys have 10 dump trucks lined up in the street. They block the bus lanes. They do all of these things. This is all the contributors to why you have traffic. So they created all of this, and then they gave you, here, we're gonna, this is our solve. We're gonna tax you guys for sitting in this congestion that we created. So it is, I feel it's planned, and it's a rug pull. It is a rug pull. They have figured out a way. If we let this go through, and everybody needs to get super active, because once these things kind of go through, then similarly to London, where it's on the table to try to see if they're going to tax the city, those kinds of things will happen. When you have these unscrupulous people at the helm, anything's possible.
Well, there you have it. We heard about the congestion pricing issue. Zaire, I'm going to have you back on the show once we see what the exact situation is going to be, what plan they're going to take, and we're going to discuss it further to see what's going on.
Yes, sir, my brother. Thank you.
All right, thanks for coming on the show today.
Have a good one.
And we catch you later. All right, guys. So you heard it first. Zaire Baptiste. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments below. And stay tuned for the next show regarding congestion pricing. When they decide to do what they say they were going to do, we got to see what the final decision is going to be. Who is going to affect, who's going to be exempt, who's not going to be exempt, and who it impacts the most. We catch you guys later. Peace.